Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Jenny. I'm from Jenny Card Designs. My YouTube channel contains content that is intended to share paper crafting, tutorials, and inspiration with all of you. I hope that you enjoy. Today's video was designed specifically for a subscriber. Her name is Beverly, and I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Beverly. She is one of the kindest, most generous ladies that I've ever met in my life. She gave all of these Altenew stamp sets to me. I am so ever grateful for them, and they will be fully loved in my craft room, and I just want to thank you for doing that for me today. So now in the pile of stamps that Beverly had given me, I happen to have a duplicate. So with Beverly's permission, I would love to give this stamp set away to one lucky Canadian viewer. So if you live in Canada and you are subscribed to my YouTube channel, please leave a comment down below and let me know that you would like to be entered into the giveaway for this stamp set. Now, this is a very gently used stamp set. It is not brand new, just a little heads up. I would like to gift this stamp set to someone who enjoys stamp layering as much as I do. In today's video, I'm going to be walking you through how to line up this stamp layering set from Altenew. It's called the Peony Bouquet. We'll be using a stamp positioner tool today to line up these flowers. So I'm going to pull the stamps out of the package, and I'm going to start with the first one, which is the outline layer. I find this is the easiest way to start with stamp layers, because then you'll be able to see where the pieces kind of fit into each other for the next layer. And yes, I want to address the elephant in the room. I am wearing a Christmas sweater. It is a pandemic, and that's how I roll. So because I love this sweater so much, I am going to wear it as often as I can. All right, so I've got the first outline stamp lined up in my MISTI. One key point that I want to point out is that when you're layering the stamps, I suggest setting them up in your stamping tool the same way they're laid out in the packaging. It makes it easier to be able to see where the images line up on top of each other, because for the most part they're laid out in the same orientation. So I've gone ahead and inked up the stamp with some Gina K Designs Amalgam Black ink. So it's a nice crisp dark black. So I stamped that image. I'm going to wipe off my stamp. Okay, the next layer is the solid layer, and I'm going to use the packaging to line it up. This one is super easy to line up. You just follow those stamped black outlines, and this should just fit exactly the same shape all around the outside. So I'm going to ink this stamp up with my lightest color. I'll clean off my stamp and then go for the third image in this set. And the third image has got the detail. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to lay the packaging over top of my stamp just to kind of see whereabouts this image is going to land. And you'll get an idea of where the little pieces should line up. I'm going to zoom in nice and close so that you can see this. So here you'll see the little layered artwork details and where they line up with the next image. So when you lay it over top, you'll kind of see it sort of slide into place. I'm moving it off of those lines so that you can see when I line it up, you know it's right straight on top of those lines. So there are a few points that you can look at on the stamp set to make sure that it's lined up nice and straight. And then if it doesn't line up, don't fret. You can go ahead and realign it and stamp it again until you get it in the proper position. And I stamped this one a few shades darker than the first image. Now I'm going to take the next layer, and I'm going to stamp this with my darkest color. So this is the darkest detail in the inner parts of the flower. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm just checking the packaging to see where it lines up. You'll see the outlines and where my fingers are pointing, where they line up with the other images. And you'll kind of see exactly where it's supposed to be. So as I move it around, I just shift it so that you can see where the detailed lines are and how they sort of land on top of the spot where they're supposed to go. So here we go. Here's our stamped image complete with 4 layers, the outline, the solid color, and the 2 details. Now we're going to go back to the stamp set, and we're going to stamp this little bud, and I stamp it with the same black ink. And then we'll take the second layer, and this is a solid color. We'll line that up. This one's very easy to line up. You'll see it kind of slide right into place where it's supposed to be. And then we'll stamp that with the lightest color ink. And I really like this color. This is the Hero Arts Tide Pool. It's one of my favorite colors. Okay, we'll go in with a second layer and I'll stamp this with my second darker color. And once again, you'll see the little etched lines on the stamp and where they sort of line right up with the black stamped lines on that flower. So just take your time to make sure you position it right. And I stamped this one a few shades darker than the first image. Okay, we'll go in with the last stamp for this one. We'll use the darkest ink for this one. It's the detail layer that requires the darkest ink, and we'll line that up. Just move it around to make sure that you've got it in the right spot. Look through the stamp and you'll see that it lines up with those other black lines. And we'll stamp that with the darkest ink. And there we go. It's a beautiful, realistic looking flower. Now we're going to stamp the stem for this one. There are two parts to the stem. So I'll get that lined up. It's super simple, nothing too complicated here. We'll line up that little stem and I'll stamp that with some of green ink. And then there's a second layer to this as well. This layer gives the stem a three-dimensional look. I'll ink this second layer with the shade of green that's a little bit darker than the first green that we used. Now we're going to move on to some of the leaves in the stamp set, and I'll stamp two of them at the same time. And I find for this set that if I stamp the line art images first with my darkest color, I find that to be the easiest way to sort of line these ones up. So I'm going to put those in my MISTI and I'll get them picked up with the door, and I'll stamp those with my darkest color. I'm not using a black outline for these stamps. And for any of the stamps, you don't have to use a black outline. You can use the same color tone as your flower. It doesn't really matter. So I'm getting the second layer. This is the solid layer. It's going to fill in those leaves with color. I'll get those lined up, and same thing. They just sort of land right over top of the stamped image. This is very, very simple layering. Nothing too complicated here. And for this layer, you want to use your lightest color here. And this is already looking beautiful. And we'll get the last layer for this set and we'll get those lined up. This is also super easy to line up, and you'll see them just sort of slip right into place. We'll get those stamps picked up with the door of the MISTI and ink those with my mid-tone color. So we kind of went a little bit backwards for this one, but I think it just helps it to be able to layer them perfectly. And that's it for this stamp. I like the Tide Pool color so much that I'm going to go back and re-stamp the first image. So I'll get that lined up. It's easy to line it up around the black outline and then stamp it in. I like that a lot better. So I'll take the dies for this set and get them all taped up around my images and run this through my Gemini Junior die cutting machine. Okay, I'm going to grab the Simon Says Stamp Pretty Peonies red rubber background stamp, and I'm going to lay that on my work surface and ink it up with some soft granite ink from Hero Arts. And I'll take a panel of cardstock and just put it over top of my background stamp and a scratch piece of paper and just rub over top of it to transfer the ink onto my cardstock. And we get a perfect light gray tone background. And then I've got some teal cardstock here, and I'm going to trim it up so that we get a nice layer in behind my peony background stamp. So I'm making a 5x7 card, and I'll trim those up so that they layer nice and evenly. And then I'll get everything adhered to my card base, and I'm using a 120-pound accent opaque digital card base. It's a nice heavyweight cardstock. And then I'm going to get my florals lined up, just sort of an idea of where I'm going to glue them down, and they don't even stay like that. I change it up. I'm going to grab this stamp set from Birch Press Designs, and I like the font here. This says kindness, and I picked a sub-sentiment. I don't know what it says. I think it says I'm touched by your kindness. I think. I can't remember. So I'm going to use some anti-static powder bag, and I'm going to rub that over my cardstock, and I'm going to stamp these images at 2 separate times just to make sure that I don't get anything crooked. So I'll stamp the word kindness, and I will get that lined up, and then I'll stamp the sentiment, and it does say I'm touched by your kindness. And I'll grab a coffee filter, and I will sprinkle some silver fine detail embossing powder over top of my words, and then I will heat set these words until they're smooth and melted. I'll get that sentiment trimmed out, and then I'll put that right in the center of my card. I really like that. And then I'm going to reposition all of my flowers. I didn't like that little weird empty space, so I thought it would be nice to add a flower there. And then I just sort of tuck my leaves into the sentiment, and I like the way that turned out. And then I'm going to grab some Lawn Fawn liquid glue, and I'm just going to randomly sprinkle around some sequins. These sequins are from Tailored Expressions, and they're called Snow Flurries. So they have a bunch of white and silver sparkly sequins, and I like the way that turned out. I think it's a really pretty card to send off to a well-deserving lady. Here's a close-up look at the finished card project. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend it here with me. Don't forget to leave a comment in the description below if you are in Canada and you would like to be entered in to win the stamp set I mentioned earlier in this video. Have yourself a lovely day, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!